Here's one of the evils of the entire system as well. You might have two outstanding parents, and let's say that we could compare them. You have this mother who was 95%, in the 95th percentile, that's how good of a mother she is. And you have a father who was in the 94th percentile, that's how good of a father he is. And a judge supposedly, even though it's all fictitious to begin with, but it might be in the best interest of the child to be with this mother who was 95%. And even though you're a 94% father, you're not the better parent. And these attorneys, these divorced attorneys, get this conflict going. Because every time there's conflict, they make money. And an attorney says, well, I'm fighting for my client. He's fighting to make himself rich, or she's fighting to make herself rich. But she does it under the guise of fighting for the client. And the child would benefit from two outstanding parents. And I mean, if you were the 96th percentile and the mother was the 95th, supposedly you should be the better parent then. And this is in the best interest of the children. So what the judges are saying is that it's in the best interest of the children to be with one parent. Even though you have two outstanding parents, it's the best interest of the children is to only be with one parent. And the Attorney General says, absolutely. We should have continuing contact, but you're still a visitor. Because it's in the best interest of the child to be with one parent, not both parents. Now, my position is that both parents should be there 100-100. And the 50-50, I know that's what you're fighting for, and that's what many people are fighting for. I would like to say reduce divorce and you have stronger families. But if divorce happens, because the state of Texas mandates divorce in many instances.
Well, absolutely they do. But I picked up on a couple things. Mm-hmm. Three things that I would like to tie in.
Sure.
And to clarify.
Yeah.
Number one, the adversarial system.
Yeah.
There are things that when you enter the system you don't know.
Yeah.
But the system is designed to be adversarial. And so when you have two people who are having difficulties within their marriage, now you have driven a wedge between them that we're not even in the right ballpark. Mm-hmm. When you're talking about dealing with families,
right.
we're not even supposed to be in the legal system. And I was so naive when I got served papers. On the top it says, you have been sued.
You've been sued. For what?
So when people think that they've been sued, it's bad. You have somebody that's trying to steal your money, or you're having to go to court, all these things. So the process in itself of dissolving a marriage is a lawsuit. And as I just said, dissolve a marriage, the dissolution, the irreconcilable differences. These are word games that they have used to mask the adversarial side of what you're entering into.
Right.
So I want to say my number two issue here is these family and law attorneys. Family law, until I want to say the 90s, early 2000s, was a despicable area of law to practice.
Still is.
They were the scum, the scum that they still are. But this is an interesting thing. In that time frame, in the 90s or so, Texas passed tort reform. I'm not sure if you're aware of this. When tort reform was passed, and it limited how much these attorneys could sue for.
Oh, that's right.
To $250,000 was a max that they were allowed to make. It was no longer a lucrative place in law. So you had these scumbag tort lawyers become family law attorneys. And they knew how to play these games. Now I'll say, I'm not going to stick up for insurance companies because they're on the same level as family law attorneys. But you have scumbags from one industry moving into being the scumbags of another industry. But the third thing that you mentioned earlier that ties all this together is the money.
Yeah.
And absolutely, both CPS and child support enforcement are paid on a percentage of compliance or goals that they want to attain.
Yeah.
There's 5 performance measures within child support. One of them's establishment of paternity. Then they get paid on how much money they collect, the arrearages, and the cost to enforce. So the higher their attorney bills are, it brings down that number. And I know there's one more. But the essence is they are paid based on those performance measures, which are the incentives, on top of the 66 cents that they receive.
Okay.
Now to kind of tie this all back to our meeting with the Attorney General and Andrew Leone. Andrew Leone's, the question came up. 25.03 of the Texas Penal Code says you cannot interfere with child visitation.
Right.
Okay. Or
The access time.
the access time.
Yeah.
And we had done enough research at the time, and there's some guys that are really dedicated to that particular aspect.
Yeah.
I'm not denying my menial time that I get, but I'm not giving a morsel more.
Yeah. You're being forced to be a so-called deadbeat dad by the state.
Yes, and
in a sense.
And this is, if I could agree with my ex-wife, that'd be fine. But in no other area, and I think this is very worth mentioning, in no other area do I have to have the consent of another individual to be able to exercise a right that you naturally have. I don't have to ask Jeff if I'm able to travel down the street on foot. I don't, you see what I mean? I know that's a kind of a ludicrous example, but that's what we're doing. I have to have the consent of the mother, and I mean, it doesn't matter, I'm limited.
Yeah.
But to tie this back to
wait a minute. Maybe she had the children by herself. Were you there when the children were born?
But you bring up a point. When you ask that question, she and I were there. I want to know where Ken Paxton was.
Exactly.
Or Greg Abbott. Because, as I showed you earlier today, when you sign your marriage license, you've entered into a 3-way contract. You, your spouse, and the Attorney General. And that's how he fraudulently gets you into the contract, is because you've agreed to marry into his bunch down there. And if you don't believe me, go dig it out of a safe or wherever you keep your documents and
Take
look
a look
at
at
it.
the back of your marriage license.
But anyhow, the reason I mentioned the 2503, there are men out there mainly who are denied access to their kids. And then they go down to the DA or...
And for the women out there, we're not denying women have the same issue.
No, absolutely
We're talking
not.
about in general, but...
Generally speaking.
Anyway, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I think that's worth notating. There's always a variance.
Right.
There's never 100% of anything.
Right.
But
which is why women were down there at the meeting with us.
Absolutely. So we're not trying to alienate them. We're not anti-women.
No.
But by and large, 90% per the Attorney General's website are non-custodial men.
Yeah.
That said, they are paid to enforce child support. Let me back up. Yes, they're paid. We know they're paid to enforce child support. But they are paid incentive money by the federal government through Social Security to have a program for enforcing visitation, access and visitation. Now, Mr. Leone wanted to brush this aside, and we said, no. And you have guys in here that can quote U.S. Code, Texas Family Law, the code in there, many of them from memory.
Yeah.
And when you quote this back to him, to Andrew, Mr. Leone, he says, well, we get paid enough to fund a website to get you in contact with a lawyer who's not going to really help you anyways, but you can call him.
So, you just mentioned something there, that so many people that have had to look up the Texas Family Code, read court decisions. I mean, this is something I never did on my own. I never had to do on my own. It's something that I think you've picked up on your own. And all of these citizens are out here looking at these laws and saying that they're wrong. But I think that sometimes these laws are so complex that, first off, they contradict each other in various points. They don't give definitions, but they might say something here and something here, and if you're arguing this point, but it says this here, then you argue this point, but it says this here. So no matter what, they're trying to say you're in the wrong. But what I've noticed is that there are so many people, common people, that have had to say there is something so wrong, evil, and unjust with the system that they are going into case law. They're looking at the Texas Family Code. They're looking at constitutional law. They're looking all over the place. And you're one of the people that's done that. And I know that there's other people that have gone, like you said, they specialize in different areas. And go ahead.
Well, and it's not because I wanted to.
No, nobody wanted to. But I want to be playing with my grandchildren.
And I
And you want to be with your children.
Absolutely. And it's why I live where I live. And,
Yeah.
And
yeah. You mentioned something else that I want to take a little sidetrack on. So when we had this meeting, we asked the Attorney General, actually it was Andrew Leone who was communicating with us. We said, what about the people who are behind in child support? Because the Attorney General's office puts their names sometimes and faces on his website. These are child support evaders, and he's requesting the public to help him find these people. I remember talking with Andrew Leone, and I said there are people that want to be there, but they are afraid because they cannot pay child support. And if they come to the meeting, will you arrest them, or will you give them safe harbor, a safe passageway? And he's like, well, we're not going to be in charge of that. So I mentioned to him, I said, well, if this is the case, the people that you need to hear from the most regarding the unjust and abusive practices of the office will be silenced. And he's like, I don't like to hear it that way. But I said, but that's the truth. And he would still not guarantee safe passage for them. But what we've noticed is that there are people that were there that appear to have been targeted afterwards.
yes.
I don't know if this is true or not, whether it's my perception, but I know that there were several people that were there that appear to have been targeted by the Attorney General's office. Do you have any further comment on that?
I think it's hard to say because they are so aggressive.
And of course they're doing the public's duty as they are throwing fathers and mothers into jail. They're acting in the best interest of the children.